This episode is brought to you by NPR's Life Kit podcast. Let me tell you a true story. I was just outside in my backyard doing a little gardening and, as always, absolutely getting demolished by mosquitoes. Then I came in to record this very message right here about NPR's Life Kit, a show that gives you useful guidance to live your life a little better. And guess what their most recent episode is about? How to actually make yourself less attractive to mosquitoes. See, that is exactly the kind of advice you get from Life Kit, from fitness routines to mental resilience to navigating personal goals. Life Kit offers real stories, relevant insights, and clear takeaways. Finances, parenting, household chores. It's not just self-improvement. It is about living a better life starting right now. And yes, there's advice about mosquitoes. Look, I'm not going to spoil that episode for you. You should go listen to it. But that citronella candle, it's probably not doing anything. Anyway, go check out their list of episodes. I'm sure you will find something with some advice that you are looking for. Listen now to the Life Kit podcast from NPR. This day is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. Hello and welcome to This Day, a history show from Radiotopia. My name is Jody Avirgan. This day, July 1972, Russian agricultural officials are holed up in a hotel in Midtown Manhattan, and they are cutting deals left and right. The backstory is that Russia had suffered severe crop shortage in the first couple years of the 70s, and this meant that they had to buy wheat from America in order to keep their system afloat. This, on its face, would probably seem like a good thing. American farmers could use the economic boost. They often had a surplus of wheat, and the geopolitics of it weren't that bad either. Nice to have Russia at the mercy of the United States at the height of the Cold War. The problem was that Russia bought way too much of America's wheat. Russian officials cut deal after deal with American farmers in secret, in isolation, and as one official put it later, the Russians knew how much they were buying, but no one else did. And it wasn't until months later that people were able to see the bigger picture, which was that Russia had snapped up 1/4 of our wheat crop. No surprise, this led to crazy ripple effects in the U.S. market, sent American officials scrambling to stabilize the market, and kind of soured this whole cushy deal. So let's talk about the Great Grain Robbery of 1972. I wish I could take credit for that, but it was someone at the time, I think a senator, who called it the Great Grain Robbery. But here, as always, Nicole Hammer of Vanderbilt and Kellie Carter-Jackson of Wellesley. Hello there.
Hello, Jody.
Hey there.
Want me to butcher Russian agricultural history in 30 seconds right now to set this up?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. We're not moving forward until you do.
Well, one thing you should know, Russia, big country. There you go. Look at this.
Helpful.
Very helpful. No, look, Russia obviously has lots of space and lots of area that is conducive to crops like wheat, but it has a much more unstable and fickle climate than, say, the American heartland. And so the context you need to know here before we get into this story is that this kind of thing, crop collapse, happens in Russia fairly regularly. They just have these years where the weather doesn't work out and things go really, really bad, really, really fast, and they end up having to scramble. So, as I said, 1971 is one of those years. Their agricultural economy is on the verge of collapse, so they have to go elsewhere. And, you know, it is this interesting irony, but also a really important reminder that, like, throughout the Cold War, the U.S. and Russia were still, like, cutting deals, still having conversations, still have deep economic ties. And this is just a really fascinating example of that. So, Russia's in trouble. They say, we got to get our hands on American wheat. How do they go about that?
So Russia's troubles happen to coincide with Richard Nixon in 1972, when he is staring down the barrel of 3 separate issues. One of them is that the U.S., for one of the first times in a while, is facing a trade deficit. That means that we are importing more stuff than we're exporting, and this makes people nervous. They don't like having trade deficits. I mean, we've been in a trade deficit ever since, so we've managed. But at the time, because it was something new, people were pretty worried about what was happening with the trade deficits. The second thing that Nixon was dealing with was he was rolling out this new policy of détente in the Cold War. He was opening up relations with China. His big visit to China is in 72. And he's also trying to, make things a little warmer with the Soviet Union. And then the third thing he's dealing with is the 1972 re-election campaign. Remember, he won election in 68 in a squeaker of a race, and he wants to seal the deal in his re-election. Okay, three very seemingly different things, but the wheat issue actually kind of solves them all for him. So he goes into negotiations with Russia. He's like, hey, would you like to buy some of our grain? You're a big country, you have these crop failures every once in a while. We're willing to make a deal with you. Let's tighten up our relationship. So he starts talking with him about this. And on the side, he's thinking, this is great. We have this big surplus of wheat. If we are able to dump it on the Russians, we'll be able to close that trade deficit. And U.S. farmers are going to be really happy because they're going to get a lot of money coming in right before the 1972 election, and I'll lock up their votes. So he enters into this deal where he gives Moscow the ability to buy $750 million of grain on credit. So they don't have to come up with the money. So they can buy it on credit over the next 3 years. And that's how this deal sort of starts to play out.
Yeah, and he sort of says, green light, go cut some deals, right?
Yeah, have at it.
Yeah.
Have at it. It's fine. We've got grain. You've got the need. What he didn't understand was how big the need was.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the crux of this whole story.
Well, at how big the need was, which we'll get to in a sec, but also that he kind of doesn't stay on top of monitoring every deal. He says, here's a bunch of farmers, literally hole up in the hotel room and just have some talks. But yeah, no one has a real sense of how big the need is. I mean, Kellie, what ends up transpiring?
Oh my gosh. So they found out that the Russians didn't just buy wheat. They bought 11 million metric tons of wheat, about 1/4 of the United States crop. So we're talking 19 million tons of grain of all kinds. And the problem is, there wasn't a lot of full disclosure about who was buying what or how much. And the Russians knew how much they were buying, and they didn't really tell how much they were going to do or what kind of deals they were making with other people. And the government loses control over their stock, over how much is actually being taken out. And they realize this is actually going to hurt us quite a bit. So that by September of 72, the Soviets have spent $1 billion on grain from companies from the United States, more than any other country like France, Canada, Australia. And this gets out that the Russians are buying more than the United States can really afford to lose. And it actually kind of craters the market, because now people are like, oh, snap, we actually won't have enough wheat and we actually can't charge the price that we're charging. We have to increase the price in order to have sustainability.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. The Soviets, because they were doing it all behind closed doors, were getting kind of bargain basement prices. And once it becomes clear that they've cornered the market on wheat, then everybody else who needs wheat suddenly has to pay an enormous amount because now there's scarcity. And this is why, everybody kind of loses it when they realize that the Russians have absorbed this much of the wheat market behind everyone's back.
Before we start, I want to recommend a beautiful season of The Heart from fellow Radiotopian Caitlin Prest, a legendary audiomaker who is known for exploring big questions and creating cinematic love stories from a feminist perspective. Caitlin has just revisited her series No, which is a series that was produced on the eve of the Harvey Weinstein scandals, about a topic that was supposed to be treated differently forevermore. In the series, we follow the story of a young girl navigating love, sex, and consent, and all the men in her life that she tried to say no to. It wasn't produced that long ago, but even with just a few years of perspective, it's really interesting to revisit No, as Caitlin is doing with some new material in the Heart feed. This is a difficult topic, but it ends up being heartwarming, soul-crushing, and funny at the same time. So whether you listened to it when it first came out, or you are new to it now, listen to the No series with fresh ears. Check it out in the Heart, wherever you get your podcasts. I I want to take a moment to tell you about Quince, your solution to stylish summer clothes. Now, I am recording this very spot on what I would say is the first true summer day here where I live. It is hot. It is sunny. I'm not going to lie. It's a little sticky even down here in my office. It is all those things, but it can still also be stylish. To me, peak summer is the time to go back to those reliable, high-quality staples in your wardrobe. Obviously, there's linen. And lucky for you, Quince has a ton of great linen clothing, from button-downs to pants to shorts. I have fully flipped the switch to linen, sometimes all linen. I am wearing my 100% European linen drawstring beach pants right now. They go great with sandals, but I can also dress them up a little bit if I want to throw on a button-down or even a light jacket. By the way, those linen pants, they're under $50. How does Quince do this? Well, it's by working directly with top artisans and cutting out the middleman. Quince gives you luxury without the markup. Give your summer closet an upgrade with Quince. Go to quince.com/thisday for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/thisday to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/thisday. Stay cool out there, folks.
This show is supported by Odoo. When you buy business software from lots of vendors, the costs add up and it gets complicated and confusing. Odoo solves this. It's a single company that sells a suite of enterprise apps that handles everything from accounting to inventory to sales. Odoo is all connected on a single platform in a simple and affordable way. You can save money without missing out on the features you need. Check out Odoo at odoo.com. That's odoo.com.
We're here in the summer of 72 when all these negotiations go down. By the spring of 73, wheat prices, after word has gotten out about what the Russians have done, wheat prices nearly double in the U.S. And it just sends, and there's massive ripple effects throughout the economy, but it just sends this kind of market into crisis. But going back to your sort of three factors that lead Nixon to kind of at first embrace this, I mean, how does this scuttle those? I mean, obviously, the farmers get to charge more. It's not the end of the world, but it feels like it really eats into this surplus that they had, and all of a sudden the agriculture department is sort of really meddling with their markets, right?
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, the farmers are doing great. They actually see their incomes rise, I think something like 14% more than inflation, and inflation was starting to go pretty gangbusters at this point in time. So farmers are doing well, but it also means that you're going to get a heavy hand from the Department of Agriculture as they try to right the ship following this big sale, right? They're going to monitor much more closely foreign sales of wheat. So now you're going to have a tremendous amount of oversight from the federal government. It's not just going to be the federal government coming in and handing you checks. It's going to be them monitoring all of the sales that you're doing. So farmers get a little bit of that. Trade deficit, I mean, it helped the trade deficit a little bit going out of 72 and into 73, but there are just enormous systemic changes to the U.S. economy that are going to keep the trade deficit basically growing over the next half century. So it doesn't, it slows it down for a little bit for a year or two, but it doesn't eliminate it. And then détente. It's interesting to see the stories coming out about this because they are very much in the tone of those sneaky Russians. We tried to help them out. We gave them an inch and they took a mile.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that on the whole, this was fantastic for détente, or at least it revealed that détente was going to be a little trickier than Nixon might have thought because public sentiment was not entirely in favor of warmer relations with the Soviets.
Yeah. There's one other element here. I think clearly this skews the markets. This also just sends U.S. agricultural policy into a total tailspin. The agriculture secretary at this point is this guy, Earl Butz. We've done an episode about Earl Butz where he was, do you remember this? He was caught giving this just absurdly racist rant to a reporter. But anyway, he's the one in charge here. Part of the U.S. policy at this time was actually to pay farmers not to grow crops because they were so scared of a surplus. And even in the wake of all of this, Butz is still kind of saying, in the fall of 72 and into 73, he's even still kind of putting programs in place saying don't grow crops. They're so scared of surplus. The point is everyone's scrambling. Everyone's just grabbing at different levers. People were caught really, really flat-footed on this. Inflation becomes an issue. We've done an episode, I think, on the the tractor brigade that came into Washington, where a bunch of angry farmers rode their tractors from the Midwest into Washington. That comes in the wake of all of this as well. It's just totally like rat fucks the agricultural market. Is what you need to know. Okay, let's talk.
Price and wage price controls come into play, because eventually it's just like, we have to cap the price of all of this, or the people really will revolt.
Can we also say that communication was key here, because the CIA knew what they were doing, and I guess didn't tell anyone, or did, and no one listened to them. And also satellites could have shown like how bad it was in terms of crop development in Russia, and could have given the United States at least a sense of a scale of how much they needed, so that they wouldn't have gone in sort of not knowing how much they would have sold.
Yeah. So that's the really fascinating ripple effect here too. And on the USDA website, when you kind of go and look at this story, one of the main ways they frame it is that it is actually the story that led to like a better intelligence infrastructure around agriculture, including, as you said, better satellites that could see what was happening, so that, had there been satellites up there really getting a picture of Russia's crop situation, they would have known, these folks are in really dire straits. Maybe let's get over on top of all this, rather than letting them cut all these individual deals. And so it accelerated the need for like intelligence, agricultural intelligence. It also led to, rules in place that like if American companies are going to cut big deals with foreign companies, they have to notify the government, so that they don't all of a sudden just poke their head up and say, oh my gosh, look at all these deals that got cut without us looking. Just people got on top of it a little bit more, is one of the big ripple effects. I mean, another interesting ripple effect is that going into 1974, the U.S. had to really dial back a lot of the food assistance that it did to developing countries, because it had such shortages, and was trying to play catch up here domestically.
Yeah, that idea that so much of the surplus agriculture in the United States was used for aid, right? Like it was used to help suffering countries, and it was part of American soft power, which we've talked about in recent weeks. That idea that this was something that the U.S. could do in order to support these other countries, and actually the federal government could help support American farmers by buying that excess product and then sending it abroad. And that system comes under strain in 1974, and as we know, disappears in 2025.
Yes, well, that's true. This is not a one-time thing. I mean, Russia, as we said, Russian agricultural collapse happens from time to time. And so there was another one in 1975. There were other reports, even as recently in 2010, there was a sort of scare about a similar crisis. So, this is an ongoing thing. But I think with improved intelligence, and now the Commodity Futures Trading Commission kind of keeping their eye on all this, though I don't know if they got doged or not. In theory, they are kind of keeping ahead of this, so that there are no more surprises going forward. All right, well, let's wrap it up there. Now, before we go, a quick reminder about our newsletter and our ongoing project to get ready for America's 250th birthday. And I will just say, unlike American agricultural officials in the mid-70s, I, for one, would be thrilled if a bunch of people secretly bought up a ton of our offerings without telling us. That's fine. Go for it. Collude. Throw some money around, right?
I'm open for negotiations.
Yes, exactly. Hole up in a hotel and cut some deals. As long as those deals include subscribing to our newsletter. That is all that matters. Yes, if you want to support our efforts and get lots of interesting stuff each week, as well as exclusive subscriber benefits throughout this next year, sign up for America 250 Watch in our weekly newsletter, thisdaypod.com. To join up, that is thisdaypod.com. Thanks to everyone who's done their part. Nicole Hemmer, thanks to you, as always.
Thank you, Jody.
And Kellie Carter-Jackson, thanks to you.
My pleasure.
Radiotopia from PRX.